Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. This is week number 5 of the course Software Project Management. In this lecture we will start the chapter number 5, which is Project Scope Management. So before starting today's lecture, let's have a look towards the previous lecture contents. In the previous lecture we focused on what is project integration management, what is strategic planning and project selection, and we saw that how to develop a project management plan, how to direct and manage the project work, how to monitor and control the project work, and we focused on performing the integrated change control process and how to close the project or the phases. So in this lecture we will focus on the project scope management. So the learning objectives for this particular lecture would be to understand the importance of good project scope management, and to discuss methods for collecting and documenting requirements in order to meet the stakeholder needs and expectations, and explaining the scope definition process and describe the contents of project scope statement. And we will discuss the process of creating the work breakdown structure using 3 different approaches. Number 1, the analogy approach. Number 2, the top-down approach. And number 3, bottom approach. And we will discuss that how to create the work breakdown structure using analogy, top-down, bottom-up and mind mapping approaches. And we will focus on explaining the importance of verifying scope and how it relates to defining and controlling the scope. And also we will see that what is the importance of controlling scope and approaches for preventing scope related problems in information technology projects. So first we need to know that what is project scope management. Scope refers to all of the work involved in creating the products of the projects and the processes used to create them. So whenever we are talking about the scope of a software system, it means every single set of requirements that will be included in all of the work which will be involved in order to create that product or the project, and the particular processes which will be used to create them. So in short we can say the work involved in creating the products of the project is basically refers to the scope of the project. A deliverable is a product produced as a part of a project, such as the hardware or software planning documents or meeting minutes. So basically a deliverable is an outcome that can be produced as a part of the project process. That can be some hardware, some software, can be a planning document or kind of meeting minutes. So a deliverable is basically that essential part of a project that you will prepare in order to meet some important objectives. Those deliverables can be the hardware, the software, the planning documents or meeting minutes. The project scope management includes the processes involved in defining and controlling what is or is not included in a project. So in short, you can say the project scope management involves all of those processes which we can use in order to define and control that what should be the part of the project and what should not. So basically we are going to highlight those important set of tasks that should be the part of the project development or management in order to deliver or create the product of the project. So now we will see what are the project scope management processes. So there are basically 5 processes which are included in project scope management. Number 1, collecting requirements. Number 2, defining the scope. Number 3, creating the work breakdown structure. Number 4, verifying the scope. And number 5, controlling the scope. So first one is basically you need to collect all of those requirements that you should consider as a part of the project. Defining and documenting the features and the functions of the products produced during the projects as well as the processes used for the development or the creation of those products. Basically, these are those set of requirements or features, or you can say the set of functions that you need to define and document for that particular product that you will produce during the project. For this process, you also need to highlight those processes which will be used to create the products. The second process is basically defining the scope. In this particular process, you need to review the project charter, requirements, documents, and organizational process assets to create a scope statement. So, in order to define the scope means what should be the part of the project and what should not, it is important to take into consideration the project charter and a set of documented requirements, the organizational process assets to create an effective scope statement. The next we have to create a work breakdown structure, which is also called the WBS. Subdividing the major project deliverables into smaller or more manageable units or components is basically called the work breakdown structure. So, in order to make the management and implementation of the project easier, it is important to break down the larger units of the project into some smaller manageable units, and maintaining this particular hierarchy is called work breakdown structure. The second last process for project scope management is verifying the scope. Formalizing acceptance of the project deliverables is basically called verifying the scope. This is important to verify those set of requirements and features that must be the part of the project scope in order to make the project acceptable by the set of users. And this particular acceptance process of project deliverables is called verifying the scope. The last process of project scope management is called the controlling scope. And controlling scopes or changes to the project scope throughout the life of the project is called controlling scope. The monitoring to control the process of change to the project scope throughout the life cycle of the project is called the controlling scope process. So, in order for the effective project scope management, it is important to consider the key 5 processes. Number 1, you need to define and document the set of required features and functions as well as the processes in order to deliver the product produced in the particular project, which is called collecting requirements process. Then you need to define the scope by the help of project charters, documented set of requirements, and the organizational process assets. Finally, you will create the work breakdown structure in which you will break the larger units of the project into smaller manageable units. Finally, you will formalize the acceptance of the project deliverables, and this is called verifying the scope. And controlling the process of change throughout the project scope and throughout the life of the project is called the controlling scope process.